Our story begins with our young red-haired boy, who tells us that he has recently moved into a new apartment, but his neighbor, a blonde girl named Okiai, has also recently moved into the building. Our protagonist tells us that she always looks sad even she is older than him by a little. Also, the neighbors say that she is a divorced woman and sometimes he hears her crying from her apartment since they live next door, but he does not think she is a bad woman and much less let the opinion of others affect the way he sees her. Even once he dropped his wallet and Okiai kindly gave it back to him. One night our protagonist was returning home after having done overtime at work. He meets Okiai on the street, but she was being accompanied by a man who was drunk and was inviting him to drink while telling him that she was a pretty girl. Okiai clearly does not want to, but he cannot get the words out and begins to cry from helplessness for not being able to say anything. Our protagonist quickly hits the drunk with his bag and with a huge smile says that drunks are like evil spirits and should be exterminated. It is revealed to us that our prota's father was born in a temple. Our prota asks Okiai if he is okay. She thanks him with tears in her eyes. Our prota says that there is no problem, the neighbors are there to help, but Okiai with a confused and depressed look says that she can't even defend herself from a drunk being already an adult. She feels like a failure, so she runs away apologizing to our prota for being a nuisance. Our protagonist is left very worried and confused. Okiai runs until she gets tired, and when she stops she says that our protagonist is a good person. A few days later we see how Okiai is hanging out the laundry. She sees our protagonist from her balcony, and she decides to come down and meet him. She greets him and thanks him for yesterday's help and asks him if today is his day off, because our protagonist should be working at this time. Our protagonist nervously tells her that he has been suspended because the old man the other day was an influential person in his company. Okiai, really worried, tells him that she will pay him the pay cut. Our protagonist quickly tells her that there is no problem. Okiai gives him a big apology saying that it is his fault that he was suspended, but our protagonist tells her that it is not her fault because he decided to help her on his own and she didn't ask him to. Okiai asks him if there's anything she can do to repay him. He thinks for a few seconds and tells her that his grandmother sent him a lot of vegetables and he is not very good at cooking and asks if she can cook for him. After a while we see how Okiai is cooking. Our protagonist tells her that her food looks really good, she has skill. Okiai tells her that no one has ever complimented her on her cooking, so she feels happy, and with a huge smile the protagonist tells her that her cooking is fabulous. Our blonde is lost in her thoughts, but when she realizes she blushes, so he can ask her to prepare food whenever he wants. Our protagonist tells her that he would like her to do it every day. Don't be bad thinking. Okiai accepts. Changing the scene, we see Okiai in her bed. We see how she is thinking about the compliments of the main character, who is revealed in this panel that is called Saatari. She mentions that she has never received so many compliments, so she is quite happy. She also says that she is excited to come back tomorrow, but suddenly she thinks that Saatari is too good for her and she is just a coward. She starts to insult herself, but before she can continue she falls asleep. The next day we see how Okiai is leaving her job at the supermarket, but the huge feeling of being useless corner her and she starts to cry silently. We are told that because of her depression she cries too much and her husband was tired of her, and to think that for Saatari she can become a nuisance makes her even more depressed. She mentions that she is afraid to meet again with Saatari, but she promised to go. She is full of courage and rings the doorbell, and Saatari opens the door. She shyly tells him that she already came but apologizes for being a bother. Saatari without reason asks Okiai who is the one she likes the most, and Okiai blushes because the protagonist ignored her, so she lets out a little scream. Saatari tells her to choose between coffee or tea, and asks her which one she likes the most, since she bought both for herself. Okiai smiles with tears in her eyes knowing that she is not a bother to Saatari, and tells Saatari that he is very kind. Days later we see our blonde walking in the rain. We are told that her umbrella is broken. In fact, this umbrella was a wedding gift given by her mother. Okiai buys some things in the store, but when she goes out she sees that someone took her umbrella and realizes that someone was stealing it, but she could not say or do anything because she lacked courage. Even though she could stop him, she could not say or do anything because she lacked courage. She thought to herself that she would like Saatari to be here, and suddenly he appears at her side greeting her. She blushed and shouted his name because of her fright. The protagonist, seeing her situation, assumes that her umbrella has been stolen, so he offers her his. She refuses, saying that she can buy another one in the store, but before she can continue, the salesman says that all the umbrellas have been sold. Oki is surprised, but Saatari tells her not to worry and to go home. He will buy some things. Oki remains silent and knows that everything is her fault because of her cowardice. She knows that if she continues to behave this way all the time, Saatari will not receive anything in return and will feel that she is a dead weight that only hinders him. After a few minutes, we see that the protagonist is surprised to see that Oki was still outside the store. She, taking courage, tells him that it would be better if they used the umbrella together to not get wet. Saatari did not expect that and tells him that she is very smart. She blushes and tells him that she really is not. We see how they walk home together. Saatari asks her if she will come to his house today since he needs her. Switching scenes, we can see Oki's umbrella thief. The umbrella ends up breaking in half in the middle of the rain, thus making the thief end up all wet. We see how the protagonist asks Oki for her number to be in communication. She is surprised and blushing. She says yes. Saatari tells her that when she has something to do and she can't come, Oki nods her head. And when she returns to her apartment, she looks very happy to have Saatari's number. But she refuses to think about such things because she thinks she is just an old woman and not a teenager in love. The bad thoughts come up again and she worries about losing Saatari if she writes immaturely. She is scared and on the verge of tears. She doesn't know if he will be upset. But suddenly her phone rings and we see our protagonist, who asks her if she wants to go shopping later. Oki without a second's hesitation answers and then drops down on her futon. Oki thinks that Saatari makes her smile and manages to eliminate her worries with just words. In this panel we are shown the answer Oki gave her. Later we see her and Saatari shopping. He reminds her that they should buy her umbrella first. Oki, smiling callously, thinks that from a distant point of view this looks like a date. She chooses a blue umbrella. Walking around, Saatari sees some dresses and asks Oki if she doesn't want to buy clothes. She tells him that it's a good idea. Saatari tells her that there is a complete set that would look good on her. She blushes when she hears it, but takes it. Minutes later we see her trying it on and Saatari tells her that she looks great. Next we see Oki very blushed because of her happiness. Oki says that our protagonist makes her feel good and she doesn't usually wear skirts, but she ends up buying it. She then realizes that they are passing by a place that her ex-husband took her to for their first date. It was an expensive restaurant. Oki says that she felt grown up in that place. She doesn't remember having fun in that place. Suddenly Saatari takes her out of her thoughts and tells her that there is a pastry shop where everything looks really delicious. He tells her that he will buy a dessert to take it home so they can eat it together. To Oki with a huge smile she says that sounds good. This chapter ends telling us that Oki was never an adult as such. This day was really fun. Then we see our protagonist together with Oki who are enjoying the cake. Saatari suggests Oki to come back another day to the cake shop. Oki is excited about the idea of going with Saatari to another date. She is so thoughtful that she accidentally drops tea on her chest. When she realizes it, she quickly tries to clean herself. Saatari at that moment tells her that she will go to the bathroom. I think Saatari was excited to see what happened. We hear someone knocking on the door and Saatari tells him that it is probably the delivery man, so he asks Oki to please receive it. She opens the door for the delivery man. The delivery man says that the delivery is for a boy, but before he can continue he says that he didn't know that he had a wife, so he asks her to sign. Oki, surprised, says yes. We see how she remains silent while she signs. She looks at the delivery man and then returns to sign the sheet. Nervous and blushing, she tells him that she is not the wife. The delivery man apologizes for the confusion. Oki due to nerves signs in very small letters. When Saatari comes out of the bathroom she thanks Oki for receiving her package. We see how Oki is very red and almost looks like she is going to explode, and Saatari asks her if something interesting or out of the ordinary happened to her. She replies that it is not the case and Saatari tells her that her face is very red, but she says that her face has always been that way. Saatari says that the package arrived at the right time. Oki sees that in the package there are many wooden boards. He tells her that they are to assemble a shelf. We see that Okiai is very good at these things since she assembles it easily. She mentions that it is too small to be a shelf, and Saatari confesses that it is really a shelf but for condiments. He bought it for her because he always cooks for both of them and he thinks that this way she will be more comfortable. Okiai tries to pay him, but Saatari quickly says that it is not necessary because it is the least he can do for her. Okiai remembers her ex-husband, and we see a memory where her husband questions why she has so many condiments in the kitchen. Okiai tells him that if she has several spices or condiments she could cook different meals for him. Her husband wants to throw them away, saying that their kitchen is too small to have so many condiments. We see Okiai crying from helplessness because she doesn't want to contradict her husband, but she doesn't want to throw away her condiments either. Okiai just wanted to be a useful wife and for him to thank her for her effort. Saatari thanks her for everything and in fact wants her to prepare him something to eat. We see how Okiai leaves the apartment and with a trembling voice tells him that she will bring some spices from her kitchen. She will bring him many spices. And when she leaves we see that she starts to cry very hard, but they are not tears of sadness or anger or even frustration but tears of happiness.